Today I'm going to instantly react to Alabama State beating Jackson State 35-28 in one hell of a football game, and all that's coming up after the bumper.
Don't be cornering me. Hold up. Time. You gotta help me with that corner shit.
What's up, kidfolk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. Consider hitting the like and subscribe button because I upload a video every single day. It's always college football related, sports related. We have a good time. Today we need to talk about Alabama State getting the upset win of number 21, the coaches poll, number 24 in the stats perform poll. Jackson State, just days after Jackson State made its entry into either poll for the first time since 2011 and was shooting for its first 4-0 start since 1996. Would have been 25 years since they accomplished that. That said, they were off to their best start since 2011 when they lost their fourth game and moved to 3-1 just as they did today. This game was wild and all kinds of offside for a number of reasons, not the least of which is if you pay attention to the box scores and you're doing some analysis, which is what I do, you know that Jackson State has been destroying people in the second quarter of ball games. They ain't do that. They got 6 points. And more than that, they'd been outscored 7-6 in the third quarter, and then they put up 15 in that. So it was wild because all of a sudden you saw Jackson State coming up with ways to try to win this football game. I mean, we have a safety in this. We had Deion Warren get a touchdown call back on a step out of bounds that I'm still not certain that he stepped out of bounds on. Deion Warren also had a pick in this game. We saw Ryan Nettles take basically an underclass offensive line and go to work on Jackson State's defense that had been allowing less than 12 points per game. And this was the number one offense in the conference, averaging over 450 yards per game. And then we saw Jaylen Jones have one of the worst halves of football that I've ever seen. I mean, looking at this thing at halftime, you would have thought that the teams were inverse, that the Hornets had been the Jackson State of the last 3 weeks, and that the Tigers had been the Hornets who lost Southern in their opener and were 1-1 on a forfeit from Alcorn State. So really, 0-1, and this was an opportunity for Jackson State to take complete control of the SWAC East and get themselves in great position for its showdown game against Alabama A&M on April 10th. Magic City Classic is going to be a lot of fun. But look here, man. We're talking about Jaylen Jones starting out this first half, 9 of 23 for 92 yards with a pick, while Ryan Nettles, quarterback for Alabama State, started the game 18 of 29, 164, 2 tutties, and a pick. We had a real black college football game moment at halftime when they cut to the Bros having a step competition with the Sigmas on the concourse, and I'm here for it. Also, shout out to all the black folks, all the beautiful black folks that was in the fan. I'm talking about the folks that was coming out with their Q shirt on. I saw some alphas out there. I saw the Deltas coming out there. Shout out to my mama who is a Delta. I seen you skeet. I seen you skeeting too, right? I understand. I seen the pink and green. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful thing to see, right? But then back to the football game. We got a tie with they scored 9 points in the third quarter. And then we're talking about missed extra points. And then with an opportunity to go up by 1, Deion Sanders says, to hell with my kicker who almost yanked the last extra point out. I'm going to go for 2. They don't get 2. And they're up. But like at every step of the way, I'm looking at this going, yo, man, take the points that are there. Take the points that are there. Take the points that are there. Meanwhile, Ezra Gray decided, whose time? It's me time. That man had 195 yards rushing. He set a personal record against Jackson State's defense that outside of the corners looked like it was really kind of offsides. And that's the other thing that really perplexed me about Jackson State and its football team. We talk a lot about Warren Newman, wide receiver, Dalen Baldwin, wide receiver, Corey Reed, wide receiver, Jaylen Jones, quarterback, Tyson Alexander, tailback. What we are not talking about is how much better they got to get on offensive line, man. They were getting bullied by a 3-man front. Now, they were going 3 bills across that 3-man front for Alabama State, but they were getting out-bullied by those dudes up front. Shout out to Alabama State who showed up and said, no, this Montgomery. This Montgomery. This ain't Jackson, Mississippi. This is Montgomery. This is our house. And they showed out like it was their house, like they had nothing to lose. And this game was all over the place all game long. This game, I feel like if you watched it on ESPN2, you had a good time. You can understand why the game against Alabama A&M had been flexed into ESPN2, and we not going to get to see Jackson State play next week because the game with Prairie View A&M had to be called off through the COVID protocol, though I was really excited to see that one because that was the top team in the SWAC West and the top team in the SWAC East that were going to have a cross-conference matchup that could have had some implications on the SWAC championship itself. But I learned a lot about what, one, Jackson State is still chasing, and two, what they are made of, because there were times in this game when I didn't think they were going to pull out any sort of effort, but it was also a classic athleticism football game where Jaylen Jones was able to show off, but also show that he's still short-arming passes. You can understand why he frustrates some Jackson State fans because the man will underthrow passes, he will flat out miss, but he's also 6'4" and pushing 230 bills. He can run, and he does run. There were a couple times when I thought he was blowing out an ACL, and I'm thinking about, get down, boy, get down. And he wasn't able to get down, but he was a warrior, stayed through it. I also really love these uniforms, dog. Like, I didn't know there was this much red. Like, I don't think there was this much red in Jackson State's uniform before Deion Sanders got there. I'm feeling the red pants. I need one of them white jerseys. Like, the whole look, the whole away look was just so nice. I want the jacket that Deion got on too. Like, everything about how they were looking out there was gorgeous. And I think if you look good, you play well, right? Look good, feel good, play good. I feel like that's all throughout Jackson State. But they got a loss. Now the undefeated season is out the window. They get to reset, try to figure out what they need to do to get back into winning ways. But now, in a game where they had an opportunity to really open up the lead in the division, put themselves in great position, not just for the SWAC championship, but for the playoffs, which are going to be a crapshoot because everybody catching L's this year. They got out-hustled. And then toward the end, we had penalty flags flying all over the joint. Some of them, we didn't even know what they were for because the commentators on the call doing a great job. Like, shout out Jay Walker, who is down with the HBCU of all things. Like, and by that, I mean, that man was throwing it out for North Carolina Central, who, by the way, won the national championship in the indoor 4x400 meter relay, running 3:03. Shout out to y'all. That's a win for HBCUs everywhere. This man was throwing it back to Jackson State. This man was throwing it back to Alabama State, throwing it back to Howard, throwing it back to MEAC and Hampton. And we got some Joe Taylor in there. Like, this was a black broadcast about black college football and black athletics in college, and I was very much here for it. I understand that Jackson State got a loss, and many of y'all showing up here because you have adopted Jackson State as your HBCU or FCS team of choice. I'm here for that. That's why we're doing these uploads. That's why we're talking about it, because y'all asked for these. But I'm also here for the experience. I'm also here for the culture, right? And that's another thing we got to see on full display. We got to see the culture. This is why we talk about HBCUs. This is why we talk about what they can do for black players. It's also a really great feather in the cap of Deion Sanders have Dijon Warren out there showing out like it was, because Dijon Warren was number one JUCO prospect in the country according to Rivals, number two according to the 247 Sports Composite, and a 4-star coming out of Lackawanna Community College by way of Landover, Maryland. He had himself a game. They got a bunch of dudes on the scout team that aren't eligible to play right now, including Shedeur Sanders. They're going to be a problem here in the next couple of years. And I'm here for that, right? Because I would love to see the SWAC champ competing for national champs in the future. And while I'm still skeptical about how this is going to look, because they just got the y'all don't have to boil water notice removed last Wednesday, I'm here for it. I'm here for it. Make me a believer. Make me a believer. I am a critic. I am skeptical. I want to believe, though. Make me a believer. Doses.